Tuxedos, cocktail dresses, limos, red carpets, long winding staircases, glasses of bubbly on arrival, named placeholders, five-course dinners, gushing acceptance speeches, tears, tantrums, and the occasional slap. Yes, it's awards season, dear listener, and we're delighted to say that none of the aforementioned form part of the 2022-23 Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge Awards. Well, maybe the odd slap or two, but when it comes to all matters Jake Wakeling, Annie Colston and Helena Diaz-Butcher take quite a lot of separating, let me tell you. Well, just the 6 categories for us this year. Whilst we can't polish a turd, the season still had its star turns, magical moments and glorious goals. Even if we'd love thrice as many, it wouldn't be right to preempt the inevitable explosion of Wiltshire football genius on Monday versus Crawley without a tip of the hat and a shiny new personalised Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge hoodie dispatched to each of our worthy winners. Well, joining me tonight for my penultimate show as your very grateful host of the Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge is the voice of Swindon Town Matchday commentaries, Andrew Hawes. Good evening, Andrew.
Hello, sir.
How are you looking resplendent in tuxedo, stood behind said podium with card in hand?
I look more like a penguin than average in a bow tie, but we'll work our way through.
Obligatory hat atop the barnet, though, I hope. I'm also joined by my perennial co-host and leading long-distance Swindon Town light, Joe Vincent. Joseph, wagwan.
Good evening, mate. Tuxedos on.
Yeah, it better be.
Bow tie and all.
So, as I said, look, it's a funny, gentlemen. How best to summarise this season? I mean, Andrew, you've not missed a beat. So, like I said, we can't really polish a turd, can we? But there's still been enough kind of moments that I think even the most disillusioned, frustrated, annoyed Swindon Town fan will still look back on with, you know, a certain degree of happiness. And we're going to get into the detail, Andrew, but how will you look back on this season?
There's been sort of bits, I suppose. There's been those little flurries of excitement or enjoyment. I think part of the trouble is that the slide has sort of gone downwards ultimately. That it started off Harrogate apart. It started off all right, and it's gradually sort of tailed off, and it got worse in January rather than better. So I think that's the problem, the old recency bias, isn't it? But there's been the odd bits and pieces, but I don't think I'll be fondly looking back over the end of season DVD if anyone bothers to put one out.
And how about you, Joe?
You could probably describe the season in one word, and that would probably be moments. We've had certain moments you look back on fondly. You know, thinking back, maybe the Grimsby game was an exciting one. Charlie Austin back in town. You've had games like there was a bit of a buzz at Leyton Orient at home at the start of the season because of Wellens coming back. But it's been sort of fits and starts, really, hasn't it? Nothing to write home about.
I think you've absolutely nailed it there with that mention of the word moments. I think, I mean, certainly from my personal perspective, I look back over a season that includes, Charlie's return, JT's return, Richie Wellens' return. Obviously, on Monday, we, not forming part of this awards, but we've got a rather unusual clutch of returnees that are going to be wearing the probably the white of Crawley, I would imagine. But it's just a strange one. Like when you actually take an opportunity to sort of pour yourself a glass of red wine, sit back and actually, you have to work a bit hard, but I would still say there's probably 10 or 12 moments, as you say, Joe, this season, whether that be a goal or a certain point where you kind of go, do you know what? That was bloody good, wasn't it? And we're going to drill into the detail of that, Joe and Andrew, are we not? We're going to drill into the detail.
Absolutely.
Well, look. So the way that we've worked our awards is unashamedly so. We have, I mean, there is across the broad church of contributors to the Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge, there's about 25 individuals that all play a role in bringing you guys this content, and for which I am just the mouth on a stick that they reel out from time to time. And we've all basically put our votes in a hat, but we've also put each of our categories out to you, dear listener, to vote on, and vote you did. So essentially, your votes, or the result of your vote, as contributes to a single vote, which is then plugged in to the Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge votes. And let me tell you, just as well we did, because on a couple of occasions we had dead heats to split, and it was your vote that actually made the decision. So listen, it's all light-hearted. It's all a bit of fun. I said when I put the tweets out, don't get your knickers in a twist. Is it scientific? No. Is it perfect? No. We've left that for other people to sort out. And I'm sure you go and enjoy your glass of bubbly and sit down and pick through the bones of those awards. But these awards, like I said, take it with a pinch of salt, a tongue in the cheek, but we're still celebrating proper achievement this season. Proper moments, I think it's fair to say, that either brought a tear to the eye, a smile to the face, or a cheer to the throat. So let's get into them, shall we? Let's get into them. Well, look, what we'll do, we will start off with the Young Player Awards. And I think we will start with the Young Player Awards in the men's category. Now, we tweaked this ever so slightly. We said, how did we want to work this? And myself and the panel all agreed that we would go for 23. The age of 23 would be the cut-off point. So any player up to and including 23 would be more than welcome to have a shout in this category. And the nominations were Tom Clayton, centre-back. Now, he's had a hell of a season, Andrew. He came out the blocks really well, didn't he? Then he had a little bit of kind of wobble and a bit of an injury midway through. But his season seemed to recover really, really well the last sort of like 3-4 games where we've kind of seen the good old-fashioned Tom Clayton. But he's, I think, by and large, certainly he deserves his nomination, Andrew, doesn't he?
Yeah, no, I think in what was, if we're going to be polite, a hit and miss season for recruitment. He was one of the bigger hits, wasn't he? Yeah, I guess it's just that sort of dip in the middle and the injury that sort of counts against him. But no, we have seen signs that he actually could, come and move on and become a more than capable player. You would hope who would lead Swindon to better things in the division at the very least.
Next up in your category for Young Player of the Season, as I said, under 23 and under, was Marcel Lavinier. Now, Joe, Marcel, interesting season. Probably not the season he would have hoped for in some respects. But that boy knows how to put away a shit pinger, doesn't he? Let's be honest.
He does indeed. I think, to be fair, I was having a conversation today with someone with regards to next season, whether or not I think personally I might cash in on Romeo Hutton, and they were sort of posing the question, would you need a replacement right back? And I don't think we do. I think Marcel's fallen victim to Hutton's, Hutton's been fantastic going forward this season, but I don't think Lavinier's been too far behind. He's come up with some really good goals. I think he's a skillful player. He's so direct. If you're looking at a blueprint of a footballer to sort of mould and move forward with as a football club, I actually think Marcel's ahead of Romeo. He's just, as I say, he's just fallen victim a little bit just to Hutton's assisting sort of attributes.
Yeah, and in many respects, I don't believe that Romeo Hutton's form was anywhere near as good as it was post Marcel Lavinier's arrival. I think the presence of Marcel Lavinier is a testament to the benefits of healthy competition in a squad. Would you agree?
100%. You need competition in every single position. That's how. If you don't, you end up with players that are just coasting through. And I'll use this, term not related to anyone in the conversation, but you end up with players on the beach. You need someone right behind you, breathing on your neck, making sure that if you make any mistake, they're counteracting on that, and they're going to be, taking your shirt and keeping you off the pitch.
Well, the third player in this category, Young Player of the Season, 23 and under, is Sol Bryn. He's not missed a minute of the season thus far. He's been Mr. Steady Eddie between the sticks. There've been a couple of points in the season where I think Sol wouldn't be particularly happy, with the end result come the final whistle. Speaking from a goalkeeping perspective, it's not been a spotless season for Sol Brynn, but I think when you consider Sol Brynn is still a baby, Andrew, in goalkeeping terms, he'll be very, very happy with his season. I'm sure Middlesbrough will be delighted to have him back.
Yeah, I would think so overall. As you say, he's had the odd sort of dip here and there, but goalkeepers higher up the division will. I think also if you go back to the start of the season, remember there was really quite a lot of feeling, sort of much more in favour of Lewis Ward, and a bit of hostile reaction to him at the opening home game. So I think he seemed to sort of deal with all of that pretty well as well. And by and large, he's been one of the more consistent performers. So not very difficult to shortlist, I think.
And the final player in the four-man shortlist for Young Player of the Season, 23 and under, is a certain Jake Wakeling. Look, it's an interesting one, Joe, isn't it? Because it felt to me up until about 6 weeks ago, when the dialogue really started about the statistics that are underpinning Jake's season, he was starting to get a bit of flack, wasn't he? But by Christ, what if the penny hadn't dropped then? It certainly dropped now, wasn't it?
100%. I'm not too sure if this is the case right now, but at one point he was the top goal contributor of his age group in the EFL. Like it wasn't even goals. He went through a bit of a goal drought maybe over the New Year period, but he was still contributing assists. I've never seen a player genuinely at Swindon that puts as much effort in every single game. He sort of reminds me of a sort of a West Country Ji-Sung Park. He just literally has batteries in his back, and he keeps going and keeps going and keeps going. He's been fantastic. Even when he's not scoring goals, he's cutting about that pitch, giving it 100%. And ultimately, as a football fan, that's all you need and all you want from a footballer. If they come off that pitch every single game knowing they've absolutely run their bollocks off and given everything, if we lose, we lose. Do you know what I mean?
The thing I love about Jake Wakeling is, his work ethic is there for all to see. Is he the finished article? Yeah. I mean, is he the finished article? Absolutely not. But you know what? He'd be the first one to tell you that. And of all the players that I have had the pleasure of speaking to over the course of this quite arduous season, Jake Wakeling has been the player that more often than not has left me walking away feeling utterly delighted, because he has a real sort of love and affection for our football club, a real appreciation of the fans. He really appreciates, because of his pathway into the pro game, he really appreciates the opportunity that he's been given. He has never, ever spoken to me about Swindon Town being anything other than a massive club and a sleeping giant at this level. He gets where the fans' frustrations are. He understands that the fan base is bruised and battered from the last sort of 30 odd years. But, he as an individual is somebody that is just like, look, it's just standard. He will bust his ass for the shirt and for the badge. And I think that's really, really shone through. I think the thing that maybe drew a lot of criticism towards him was obviously the early season sort of expectations were that he was going to just continue to keep scoring goals willy-nilly. And obviously when the goals dried up and he started then being played all over the shop, I think people started asking questions. But he's going to be delighted with the way his season's finished. But there can, of course, only be one winner for your Young Player of the Season, Swindon Town 2022-23. Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge Young Player of the Year, and with 69% of the vote, beating Sol Brynn's 31%, well and truly into second place, was, of course, Jacob Wakeling. Congratulations, Jake. You are the Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge Young Player of the Year. He'll be delighted with that, Joe, won't he?
Yeah, he will. I mean, obviously, I'm sure he'd prefer a medal around his neck at the end of the season. Hopefully next year he can get that around his neck, and he can get a flag around his waist. There you go. He's deserved it by a country mile. Ultimately, as well, Sol Brynn, as we always say, anyone from Middlesbrough listening, he's been absolute shit. So he deserves to lose. Yeah,
Sol Brynn's had a stinker, hasn't he? An absolute stinker. And I mean, look, I'll tell you what, we'd probably do you a favour, Middlesbrough. We'll have him back next season. We'll maybe give him another season. Maybe.
We'll take him for free, do you know what I mean? Just You scratch our back, we'll scratch yours. That'll be the end of it.
Well, look, let's move on to the next young player of the season category, under 23 and under, and it's for Swindon Town Football Club's women's team. And there are 4 nominations in this category. And again, in no particular order. First up is, only because I'm obviously as a former glovesman myself, and indeed Andrew, as indeed are you. I know you will also appreciate this. We have the absolute Goliath between the sticks. That is Emily McGrogan. Well, I mean, listen, I've been very, very open about the journey I've had with women's football this season and the importance that Swindon Town women have played in terms of drawing me into the women's game with a real passion and a real enthusiasm, which I can't fake. I can only tell you that I really, really enjoy going to watch the women's team. One of the reasons I enjoy watching the women's team is the quality that Emily has between the sticks. Emily has got an unbelievable stature and presence behind her back four. If you talk to any of her defensive colleagues, they will tell you the confidence that her presence behind them brings is enormous. She's been described to me on numerous occasions as being a bit of a dark horse when it comes to setting the tone of the team. And anyone that's been in and around that team this year will tell you they are a fantastic bunch of human beings. And Emily plays a really, really important part in that. Very understated, very cheeky, but quietly confident. But don't let that fool you. She is ferocious on the football pitch. There is nobody that wants to clean sheet more than Emily McGrogan. That's something I always look out for in a goalkeeper, that even if there are a number of goals to the good, that, you know, the idea of conceding, or indeed the reality of conceding, literally turns her a fiery red in the face. So Emily McGrogan has made the shortlist this season for young player of the season under 23 and under for Swindon Town women. And next up, we have Emerson Evans. Now, Emerson Evans, a very, very interesting signing. Slotted into a front three in both James Lally and indeed Mike Cook's latterly Mike Cook's lineups. Emerson was signed from Hungerford Melksham earlier in the season, having scored an absolute ton of goals as a precocious 15, 16-year-old into the Swindon Town women's development squad and then on to the first team. And Joe, it's fair to say Emerson's not disappointed one bit, has she? Almost like a goal per game ratio for Emerson since she's made the step up.
Yeah, it's been fantastic. I think she was probably brought into the club to be looking more at the development side of things. And she's just taken the team by storm, I think, maybe even by surprise. She's come in, hit the ground running, doesn't look out of depth. Yeah, I mean, there's not much else to say about her, really. She just looks like a first team forward at that level, which is a hell of a compliment to such a young person.
Yeah, the interesting thing about Emerson is when you talk to Annie Colson about what Emerson brings to the table, Annie will talk to you about that she's utterly fearless but unbelievably humble. So she's not come into the first team environment as a youngster and been sort of like, you know, sort of the big I am, or been in any way, shape or form cocky. She's got her head down. You know, she's just, apparently just is like the personality is like a sponge for information. She is,
well, I think it was it Jane Gray that was telling us that because obviously she's such a young person coming to the women's football at this time where it's really starting to bud and there's a lot of money going into it. I think Jen was the one that said that Emerson genuinely could go up and play like women's Super League football, like
all the way to the top. Absolutely,
yeah, without any sort of stretch or too much effort, really.
And the your recently departed James Lally obviously was Emerson's coach. He was the one that brought her into the development squad from Melksham and then gave her a first team bow. And when I asked him of all the players in the squad, I asked him live on the show, who out of the squad do you think has the opportunity to go all the way to the top? I was expecting him to give me a smattering of names, but without batting an eyelid, he just said Emerson Evans straight away. Emerson, for those of you that haven't seen the women's team play, Emerson will remind you very much of Jerry Yates on the left-hand side. So very comfortable playing down the centre, but also very, very good. She is lightning fast, got really good physicality, loads of lovely technique about her. Definitely a name to keep an eye on if that's a new one for you. Also making the shortlist, she's been around the club a fair while, but she has made a good smattering of appearances across the season, playing at centre-half alongside captain Alice Bowden, is Sky Hull. Now, Sky is a very, very a real steady Eddie, but mature beyond her years. It's interesting, Joe. The comparison that I would make to Sky would be almost like a Romani Edmonds Green or a Romilly Critchlow, if you get my meaning, as in a youngster drafted into the side but plays well above their years.
Yeah, I think I think her and Bowles complement each other really well. So Bowles is sort of the wrecking ball of the centre-back partnerships, the sort of Nemanja Vidic type that's going to run in and put her head on literally anything, stud or ball, doesn't really matter. Whereas Sky will drop in behind and be the Rio Ferdinand and just, mop up and play the ball out. They complement each other really well. So, yeah, she's definitely deserving of being on this shortlist.
And the final name on the shortlist, very, very talented, super quick, bag of tricks on the deck, and has provided, certainly, if she's not top, I haven't seen the updated list, because sometimes the information at their level is not as readily available as you would like. But certainly she is going to be right up there in relation to the league topping stats for assists this season, is Helena Diaz-Butcher. Again, another product of the Swindon Town development system, has come up through the ranks. But this season, she's really owned that position on the right-hand side, Joe, hasn't she? And obviously, Annie Colston, I'm sure we're going to talk about Annie later, has been on fire in the goal stakes this season. And to a large part, that's down to the supply line that is Helena Diaz-Butcher.
100%. Lanes has been the assist queen, hasn't she? She's just... It's almost like she doesn't give a shit about scoring goals. She's just an absolute, beast in the assist stats. She's just rapid. She's direct. She's progressive. She looks for sort of link-up play with whoever playing right back. Yeah, I mean, do you know what? Also, I think as well, the big thing that drives her on and gets her in these positions is just her sort of tenacity and real fight for being on the ball. She doesn't want anyone else having the ball unless the ball's going into the net off of one of their crosses. She'll do it all herself. So, yeah, she's, as well as being an official, this Tom Broadbent Lounge athlete, she's also a great girl as well.
Yeah, she's a really good personality, but she uses her body really well and her physicality really well. So for somebody that's not kind of built like a chunky build, Lanes is very kind of slight, sort of typical kind of wingers build. But if you look at the way she very cleverly sort of steps in between ball and opposition and is able to shield the ball, I would say she boxes well above her weight in terms of her use of physicality. And I think the really interesting thing about Lanes, the best testament that I could give you is I asked Annie about 6 weeks ago, Annie Colston, what was the real reasons behind her kind of explosion this season, because Annie really struggled for goals and fitness last season. And Annie said that obviously she worked really, really hard on her fitness, but she said the main reason for her, her goals return this year has been Lanes, because of the supply line that she is. So Lanes,
it helps as well. They're best mates, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It's really important to have that chemistry. I mean, you think historically, Andy Cole, Dwight York, Teddy Sheringham, Jurgen Klinsmann, you've got those kind of partnerships, haven't you? And they are, without a shadow of a doubt, a partnership. And I certainly believe that Mike Cook will be hoping for more from Lanes next season. And I think with more investment going into the side, hopefully with a more, quote, invert commas, professional pre-season under their belt, I think it'll be all eyes on Lanes next year. She's a really, really exciting talent. Only 22 years of age, so still lots of development left in the tank. But there can be only one winner of the Young Player of the Season, 23 and under. So Tom Broadbent Lounge, Swindon Town's Young Player of the Season for Swindon Town women this year is Helena Diaz-Butcher. So congratulations, Lanes. Congratulations. A hoodie bespoke to you will be winging its way to you very, very shortly. So let's move on to the goal of the season category, shall we? Now, Andrew, this one is all about you because you've garnished each of these strikes with the most iconic of commentaries this year. You have been a real shining light in putting some smiles on faces where the team have struggled. So thank you for that, Andrew. And we're going to spend a little bit of time just picking apart some of these goals. So again, in no particular order, we'll start with the first nomination was quite a recent one, actually. Rashawn Hepburn Murphy versus Crew Alexandra. Andrew, what's your recollections?
Oh, right. Well, luckily one that I can remember in crystal clear fashion, but no, it was just, I think it was just a sort of good move, and it was more the way he kind of drove at the Crew defence committed players. There were good runs around him. Nice shot from long range as well, going past the keeper. So yeah, that was kind of quite a good counter-attacking move. So nice to see Rashawn get a mention, I think, because like I say, in the second half of the season that's gone downhill, he has provided some of the more entertaining moments.
And he is an interesting player, actually, Andrew, isn't it? It would be remiss of us not to say that, in an environment that we're in at the moment where everybody is pointing their fingers towards recruitment and management and drawing question marks around players deteriorating under the recently departed manager's watch, Rashawn Hepburn Murphy would probably be one of those players that would say, well, actually, he enjoyed maybe some upside of that particular manager's tenure. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, well, I think he got some regular game time, which is, partly through injury, but partly because he thoroughly deserved it, sort of red card apart, and responded really well to that red card as well, and has looked one of the more kind of threatening players, and has scored with one header and nearly got another, which is also impressive given his height.
A very, very exciting prospect for us for next year. So fingers crossed they will be getting ink on paper. Next up on the shortlist is one of the next two are absolute thunder bastards, Andrew. There's no better way of putting it. And I give you first knockings, Ronan Darcy versus Mansfield.
Yeah, that was a good one because I was right behind it from where we are, and the fans obviously right behind it as well. But it's just it's one of those ones you can actually kind of sense coming because he's got time, he's got space, he's outside the box, he's cutting on his right foot, he's seen the goalkeeper's left the sort of gap at his sort of back post, and he's just curled it around him absolutely perfectly, and it's rounded off an absolute trouncing as well. So very, very, very satisfying goal on any number of levels.
And there was everything about that goal as well, Andrew, wasn't there? Because there was the wonderful build-up play by his teammates before he got fed the ball. But Ronan's close control, as he sort of essentially came in field, beat a couple of men while he was sizing up his shot, was also lovely, wasn't it? And not necessarily the kind of control that you would associate with, a boggy pitch or League Two per se.
Yeah, no, it was really good the way he sort of stepped inside, as you said, kept close control. But yeah, that was all, again, as you said, the build up to that was all very much an above League Two goal, and he did veritably. He both curled it and spanked it, I think, at the same time, which is quite an achievement.
Curling, spanking, absolutely murdered the bugger, and it flew straight in the top right-hand corner. It was a peach. As indeed was the next shit pinger. I mentioned him earlier. Marcel Lavinier, Andrew, versus Northampton.
Yeah, this was one that was a bit of a surprise at the time. We have to give Scott Lindsay some credit because he'd spent some extra time out on the training ground with Marcel Lavinier, seeing that potential for him to kind of cut in on his right foot. And again, he sort of picks it up about, my memory's right, so 35, 40 yards out, just keeps going at Northampton and hits one of those shots that is still rising as it cracks in towards the top corner again. Nothing the keeper can do about it. It's got that great moment midway through where you just sense all of a sudden that the keeper is struggling to get there. And then, like I say, if it hadn't, if there hadn't been a net in the way, that would have taken someone out in the most violent fashion, and compensation would have been needed. But great individual goal.
And finally, Andrew, on our shortlist, we have got Jacob Wakeling versus Salford. If the previous two were shit pingers, this was all about technique, wasn't it?
Yeah, a very, very different kind of goal. Getting hold of a cross, I think it was from Hutton, off the top of my head, that was almost seemed a little bit behind. It didn't seem the easiest to deal with, and yet managing to stick out a boot and guide it with a reasonable amount of precision. I'm not sure he could have exactly guaranteed where it was going to go, but he certainly knew what he was doing, just to sort of flick it past the goalkeeper at the back post, who was scrambling very quickly. Again, you can tell he thinks I'm in trouble here. And then so a very kind of elegant finish to contrast the more entertaining brutality of the other two goals we just talked about.
And Andrew, a special mention. It doesn't quite make the shortlist, but it received quite a few votes from the Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge panelists, and that was Charlie Austin's goal on his return against Grimsby, one that you commentated on beautifully, might I add. What were your recollections?
Well, I think my first recollection was it felt like the first chance he'd had. Hutton Cross, I think it was, wasn't it? And it just seemed very Austin-esque, sort of timing movement in the box. There he was, in the right place. Header, goalkeeper's got no chance, and it only took about 20 minutes or so. So it just was one of the happiest moments of the season, where there he was, he's back, and he looked like he might fulfil all the hopes you'd have from his first spell, even though we were all sensible enough to know he's not going to be exactly the same guy.
Well, it was a very, very, very close one. But your winner with 38% of the vote was Jacob Wakeling versus Salford. So congratulations, Jacob. Your second award of the evening, young player of the season 23 and under, and now goal of the season winner as well, for your wonderful flick, stroke bicycle kick, stroke not quite sure what you would call it. I just like to call it paradise. So congratulations, Jake Wakeling, with your goal of the season. So that takes care of the first three categories: young player of the season under 23 for the men, young player under 23 for the women, and a goal of the season. Now we are going to move on to the moment of the season. No, we're not actually. We're not going to go to moment of the season. We're going to do your player of the season first. We're going to do moment of the season at the end. So first, player of the year for Swindon Town women, as voted by the Sir Tom Broadbent panel, and indeed voted by yourselves, dear listeners, as by virtue of your polls. And again, in no particular order, but first up, we mentioned her earlier when we were talking about Sky Hull. Joe, we've got the captain, Alice Bowden.
I mean, one word to describe Alice is probably linchpin. She's ever present. She's the captain of the team. She's the mouth of the team. She's hard as absolute nails. I think I probably just described Alice Bowden in pure sort of, I don't know what the word is, cliches there. Like, she's just pure captain material. She's just always there, and she's reliable, and that's all you need as a centre-back.
I'll tell you what, I had the pleasure of sharing breakfast with Alice and a few of the other squad members prior to the Southampton game. And I was invited to sort of come along and just sort of talk to them about the kind of build up to the game and sort of really get into their heads. And everything that you've just said about Alice is absolutely bang on. When Alice speaks, everybody goes quiet. There is nothing that comes out of Alice's mouth that you kind of sit there sort of scratching your head going, what? Like, everything has a purpose. Everything is for the betterment of her team. Everything is delivered with a certain selflessness. On pitch, as you've just said, she's absolutely like hard as nails. There was a brilliant picture, I think it's from the Exeter game, of Alice walking away from a 50-50 challenge where she was just sort of shrugging her shoulders while the opposition was left in an absolute crumpled mess. And that's that's Alice all over. She's fantastic in the air, brilliant on the deck, drives the team forward from the back. And I'll tell you another really interesting thing about Alice. We, as you know, we have a couple of all-star Swindon Town 11s that are going to be turning out on May the 14th. I mentioned to Alice, do you fancy coming and being part of the team? Without even drawing breath, she's like, 100% put me down for it. Totally unfazed by it. So the idea of playing at the county ground in a predominantly men's team, she didn't even bat an eyelid. To be playing against guys that have played international football, top level football, played in the Premier League for Swindon Town, Alice was like 100% put me down for it. No problem with that at all, which I think speaks volumes. But next up on the shortlist, we have got, we mentioned her earlier. She has scored goals for fun this season. 26, we believe, in 26 appearances in all competitions this year. We've got Annie Colston. Now, Andrew, I'll bring you in at this stage to have a chat about Annie Colston because you've commentated over many teams where you've got a goal hungry striker, and the only comparison that I can draw with Annie this season on the men's side of the football in recent history would be Owen Doyle, and they're a joy to commentate over, aren't they? These kind of players.
Yeah, no, exactly. You can tell she is utterly all about the goals. It's almost like for the games I've seen at the county ground, there is that expectation around everyone, I think, isn't it, that if she gets the ball anywhere near the goal, that she will get a shot on target, and she'll almost certainly score. So you can just sort of see it in her. That's entirely what she's there for. She'll get involved a little bit sort of outside the box, but it'll be a nice little layoff and movement, and then it's just get in the box, give me the service, and so often it pays off. So yeah, no, she's been excellent to watch when I've seen the women's team.
Indeed. Well, it paid off 26 times, as I said, in 26 appearances. That is a phenomenal goal return for Annie Colston. Also making the shortlist. Now, she made the shortlist for Young Player of the Year, and indeed won Young Player of the Year, but she's been so good that she's also made the shortlist for Player of the Season per se. And that is, of course, Helena Diaz-Butcher. I mean, Joe, I bring you back into wax lyrical about Lanes. Not only does she have a ridiculous crush on Jake Wakeling, and not only does she love to have a punch up, but yeah, I mean, what's to be said that's not already been said, right? She's a I call her Twinkle Toes for a reason. She really is one of those players that if you're in the stands, you want to watch an exciting game of football. Lanes is a supporter's dream, isn't she?
Yeah, I mean, she's just getting greedy now, isn't she, really? Two nominations. Lanes is brilliant. Like, she's pure Swindon Town as well. Like, her dad's really involved in the women's team, the community side of the football club. All of her brothers and sisters. She's got a massive sibling family. They're all Swindon Town. She loves wearing the badge on her chest. I know there was potentially whispers of her leaving earlier in the season, and she was just not about it. She's Swindon Town through and through. But not only that, she's also, as we said earlier on, she's phenomenal on the football pitch. She's head down. She's forward. There's nothing in her. There's not a bone in her that's anything but attacking. She's just, yeah. I mean, if she's hearing this, Lanes, don't get your head too big, but you're not bad at football.
I'm sure she'll be delighted to hear it. Well, look,
I'm taking it all back in the group chat as we speak.
There can be, of course, only one winner for Player of the Season. Oh no, but we're not quite there, are we? Because I've got the final nominee, and she will be delighted to know that she's even made the nominees list. Box-to-box midfielder, possibly one of the fittest human beings you could possibly wish to meet. Her grueling fitness regime is enough to make your average marathon runner's eyes water, and that is, of course, Meg Attenborough. Congratulations, Meg, on making the shortlist. I mean, Joe, Meg's a phenomenon to watch, isn't she? She's an utter powerhouse in midfield.
Yeah. I mean, you wouldn't want to go against her in any sort of track race or even a fight. To be honest, she's just got an absolute engine on her. She's almost like the Ander Herrera of that Swindon Town team. Just as we said with Jake Wakeling earlier on, just pure Duracell batteries in the backpack. Yeah, she's just all blood and thunder. A little bit like Alice Bowden, with maybe a little bit more of a creative nous. But yeah, Meg's amazing. She's, as Annie said on the show a few weeks ago, she's worked really hard to put herself through all of this training to become a PT, to get her fitness as to where it is. And I mean, she consistently shows up the girls in the gym, and she's at the top of anything in terms of fitness and output charts from games. She's just, yeah. If every footballer had her lungs, then bloody hell, we could have extra time upon extra time and penalties, and they wouldn't be, dropping a sweat.
I think the thing that really excites me when you watch Meg is she's another real leader out on the pitch. And if you look through the spine of the women's team, if you were to say Emily McGrogan, very, very capable goalkeeper, Alice Bowden, brilliant centre-back, Meg, centre midfield, again, critical linchpin, box to box, putting tackles in, playing passes, and Annie up top. There is your spine. You take Megan out of that mix and it leaves an enormous hole. So, yeah, very, very much deserves her place on the shortlist. But as I mentioned earlier, there can be only one winner for your player of the season. Swindon Town Football Club Women's player of the season, as picked by Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge, and indeed you guys, dear listeners. And it is with a whopping 94% of the vote, 26 goals, 26 appearances in all competitions. It's Annie Colston. Congratulations, Annie.
Who the fuck is Erling Haaland?
I know, absolutely right. I couldn't. And let me tell you again, for those of you that aren't familiar with Annie, get yourself along to the county ground on May the 14th. Lots of information is going to be breaking in the next 24 hours about what we're going to be doing. Annie is another one of those. Didn't bat an eyelid. Annie, do you fancy playing against international male footballers, men that have played in the Premier League for Swindon Town, men that have won trophies at all levels for Swindon Town? Didn't bat an eyelid. Bring it on, Hannah, she said. Bring it on. So I've got a feeling she's going to give a few centre halves a very, very, very difficult day at the county ground, and we're really, really looking forward to that. So congratulations, Annie, with a whopping chunk of the votes. Astounding season, astounding. And I think Annie's biggest challenge next season will be, certainly replicating and not allowing this season to be an albatross around her neck. And knowing Annie as I do, I don't think that's going to be the case. But listen, let's move on, because we've got our penultimate award for the night, which is the Player of the Season. Swindon Town men's football team, as chosen by the Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge panelists, and indeed you, dear listeners. And in no particular order, first up we have our little bald Welsh dragon, Johnny Williams. Andrew, he's had a hell of a season, hasn't he, Johnny Williams? And something tells you it's going to be one of those where you don't quite know what you got until it's gone.
Yeah, well, I think we might have seen that in the last couple of games, really. But, scoring goals has not been the most straightforward thing all season. Take his 10 out, and we might be in even more trouble, really. But, he's there, he's consistent, he ferrets away, brings that bit of sort of imagination and creativity to midfield that I think we've seen lacking in his absence. And, pretty much everyone on the squad says it, don't they? Everyone probably bar him that he's too good for this level, really. So you add that and the top scorer, he's a pretty obvious candidate for the shortlist.
I think he's one of those players, Andrew, isn't he, where you would use the cliche, he probably fell out of love with football before he came to Swindon Town, and he's certainly rediscovered the love for football. And you add in the fact that he is the Welsh national team's arch Vibemeister, that he's managed to finish this season. He will finish this season unless there's a last game of the season mega haul from Charlie Austin. He's going to finish this season with a decent number of assists, but also he's going to finish the season top scorer for Swindon Town. For a midfielder, that's a great shout, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. No, and that's something he's never really done as consistently score goals either. So that's kind of something he's added to his game this year compared to sort of last season, wherever else he's been in his career. So that's another case to push him forward, I think.
Well, Joe, the next up on the shortlist, he started the season bizarrely in pre-season on the left-hand side, where he seemed to just sort of show everybody in the Arkles that his left peg really was just for standing on, as he curled various sort of long balls down the flank out of touch. And then as the season started, he wasn't really winning over too many friends. And we mentioned earlier, we then signed this guy, Marcel Lavigne, and then before you knew it, Romeo Hutton had become the League Two David Beckham. So Romeo Hutton is the second up on our four-man shortlist for Player of the Season, Swindon Town Football Club men. A sign from Barrow. I don't think we were expecting him to have chipped in with quite as many assists as we maybe have, Joe. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, definitely. I think, as you said, in pre-season, I think he had quite a good game at Eastleigh away when it was scorching hot. And then start of the season, left back, he didn't look up to much, really. I think you could tell it wasn't his natural position. His left foot, as you say, was there to stand on and to stand on only. But then, yeah, as you say, when you brought Marcel in, you've sort of sucked a rocket up his arse. He's been consistently good. Like, just in terms of his attacking output, like, he's probably... The one thing I would say with Romeo is he's probably a little bit predictable. He's looking for that inch of space on his right foot to whip a ball in. but blimey, can that lad whip a ball in? You know, on a sixpence. It's just every time. It's like, as you say, David Beckham-esque. He's almost. It's probably the best crosser of a football I've seen since Matt Ritchie at Swindon. It's just whenever he puts the ball into the net, you're hoping you've got the likes of Charlie Austin, you know, peeling off of a centre back, which is probably the main frustration of the last sort of month to 6 weeks of Swindon. When Charlie's been on the bench, we're pumping balls into the box, and you've got no one in there to actually attack on it and to count on it. And the balls are fantastic. I mean, you look at the one that Wakeland scored away at Wimbledon. It's a great cross, but 9 times out of 10, Jake Wakeland isn't making that run. It's just when he does, it goes in.
And I think as the sort of tail end of the season sort of, you know, wore on, Joe, what I've seen more and more of from Romeo Hutton is the ability to switch it from his right to his left peg and still deliver a really interesting kind of threatening cross on his left peg. So it's, you know, I think that the sad thing is I can't help but think that, you know, there's a lot of work to be done. If we're to keep hold of Romeo in the summer, I think there's a lot of work to be done in terms of some of his PR. People will remember, weirdly, it feels to me that people are going to remember his emojis more than his crossing towards the end of this season, I think. But I don't know how much of that is to do with the fact that we kind of know he's another one that's probably too good for this standard. We probably know that, you know, he's angling for a move. Nobody ever really likes to accept the reality of a player wanting away from a football club or exploring those opportunities. And I think Emoji Gate just gives us all the excuses we need to, you know, almost like allow ourselves to fall out of love with a guy like that.
Yeah, I don't think it's, you know, falling out of love with the guy. I think, obviously, I'm not too sure that the previous coach handled certain situations the best in terms of sort of media facing and public facing situations. So I think ultimately, if you're at work and your boss is digging you out in public or in front of the team, you're going to be playing up a little bit. It's just, you know, you've got to just look at it from a human level. I think what he's done is probably a little bit reactionary, but ultimately he has been one of our best players this season. So you'd rather him be doing it than anyone else, really.
Well, Andrew, and I'll bring you in for the third member of our 4-man shortlist for Player of the Season. We've already talked about him today. We've talked about the fact that he's not missed a minute of football so far this season, and all being well, he's going to be starting the game against Crawley, and that is, of course, Sol Bryn. Model of consistency, Andrew. I can't help but think, though, just how that. I mean, there's been a lot sort of talked about the nature of the deal that brought Sol Bryn to the county ground and the fact that we have to play him. I mean, that seemed to sort of shut the door on Lewis Ward, and that led to Lewis Ward leaving for Sutton. But I can't help but think if the deal was done slightly better, so Lewis could have been real competition for Sol, I wonder how many of the little blips in his form would have been eradicated by the fact that Lewis Ward really was breathing down his neck, just like Lewis Ward was breathing down the neck of Jojo Woolacott.
Yeah, I'm sure that would have helped. No, that's all worked out in a very kind of frustrating way for everyone concerned, not least Lewis Ward, of course, who is stuck in footballing limbo as we speak, despite having been at Swindon for a while. No, I'm sure that bit of competition might have just nudged him on a little bit, but like I say, it goes back to something I said earlier. You know, he's 22, which for most players is an age, but for a goalkeeper, it's really no age. I don't know if you can remember you go back and you remember what a sort of teenage Steve Mildenhall was like in some of his first few outings and how much better he got, I think, to get the sort of level of general kind of consistency and good saves that we've got out of Bryn for the vast majority of the season makes him again a worthy person on the shortlist.
I think Sol Bryn, from a goalkeeper's perspective, I think Sol Bryn has got all of the attributes to make it to the very top. If Sol Bryn wants to make it to the very top, I think he has the height. I think he has the character. I think he's a very steady guy. He's very humble. He works really hard. Just a good egg, a great guy to have around the club. I really believe that of all the players that maybe aren't going to be here next season, my personal feeling is I think Sol Bryn is going to be one of the players that we miss the most. And I'm pinning my hopes on a little bit of magic, Mildenhall magic in the loan market. But I think we all know really that Sol Bryn's destined for bigger things and better things next season. And finally, making up the 4-man shortlist is a certain Fraser Blake Tracy. A fascinating signing, Joe, because you'll remember in pre-season we were having conversations about the fact that we were drowning in left backs and in depth in centre back positions. And then before you know it, we've had to sign Fraser Blake Tracy on emergency terms because we've basically injured them all.
Yeah, I mean, it
What
was
a
just one of
season
those
he's
ones,
gone on to have.
mate. It was one of those ones, wasn't it, where we just needed anyone. It was like throw a dartboard full of players that play left back that are available on loan, and wherever the dart lands, we'll have him. But yeah, what a happy coincidence that has been. He's been absolutely just unbelievable. He's been an absolute rock at the back, whether that's playing left back, centre back, back three, back four. He's been an absolute colossus. I don't think you could actually. I can't think of a loan signing that's come in and made as big an impact at the back as he has. You've had players in recent years like Edmonds Green done well, but he hasn't been there for long. He hasn't done, isn't pulled trees up. He's just pure captain material as well. Like he's come in on loan, and the players have just stuck to him. The players have fed off of his passion and his strength, which has been needed because we've got such a young squad. But the fans have also latched onto him from day one. Did he score in his debut at Stockport? Was that his debut?
Yes. Was it his debut?
I mean, it's certainly early on. I think it might have been his debut, but that goal,
Screamer.
I mean, it was a screamer. Yeah, to say.
I tell you what
could have been on the.
I tell you what really, really excites me about FBT was the fact that we signed him. You see him playing at left back, you're like, wow, like he's a big lump for a left back, and you stand there and you're in the stands, you're going, I'll tell you what. All right, he can play a bit of centre back as well, apparently. And then when you see him transition over to left centre back, you're like, oh my God, like what a player. And that versatility.
I mean, the guy doesn't lose a header as well. He wins every single duel. I'm certain he went for almost half the season not losing a duel in the air.
Well, he's one of those players, Joe, isn't he? How many times have you heard me say this season? He'll stick his head in the mangler for 3 points. Like he really has put his body on the line. Like and there've been chunks of the season where he's probably ended up missing more games than he would have liked because fundamentally he's put his body on the line. I mean, Salford away was a good example. He took a real clattering, didn't he, before he went off injured, went down really awkwardly on the turf. But we've seen him wearing masks. We've seen him like covered in claret.
The black eye at Bradford.
Yeah, absolutely. So he's not afraid to stick his head where you really wouldn't like to stick your head. And actually, you know what? You've got to sort of tip your hat to that as well, because you are talking about a performance environment where the risks of head injury are becoming more and more and more of a debate. And we kind of, yes, these guys are paid to be professional athletes, but let's not forget, we're talking about League Two footballers here who aren't exactly paid an absolute fortune. If you were to extrapolate their wages over the course of their lifetime, let's say, and he's got to go home to his family, and they all have concerns, but he does that for the red shirt. He does it for the badge. You can't foul but love that, Joe, can you? At the end of the day,
he's just a committed professional.
We love,
mate. He's a committed professional. When he came on the show, we had to delay the show by 10 minutes because he was getting back late from the gym. He was like, he's in the gym every single day. He gets home, he has training, he goes to the gym with the boys, he gets home, he has dinner, and he goes back to the gym for 2 or 3 hours, and then goes to bed, and then goes again. Like, that level of commitment is just, it's what you want. I know we've got Charlie Austin, and I love Charlie, but to me, he is the captain of this football club. Just the standards that guy sets in terms of, actual performance, but also in terms of just his philosophy, his aura, the example that he sets. Just give it to him now. Forget the vote. Give it to him.
Well, listen, in reverse order, at the end of the day, the votes came down to really three of the four were really in the running, with 6% of the vote in reverse order was our Welsh wizard, Johnny Williams. 19% of the vote was Romeo Hutton. And a whopping 75% of the vote, he cleaned up last night. He's cleaned up again. It's Fraser Blake Tracy. A worthy winner, Fraser Blake Tracy. Congratulations. Your second Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge hoodie of the season is on its way to you. So we move on to our final award of the night, and it's our blue ribboned award. Bearing in mind these are awards that are being given by fans, so it's only right and proper that our Blue Ribbon Award is not an old timers award or anything along those lines. Joe, you mentioned that wonderful word moment right at the start of the show, and this is the moment of the season, the Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge 2022-23 moment of the season. And there are 4 moments, and again, Andrew, this is a bitter you to put it to you. So to put it to you lightly, so in no particular order. First up, Andrew, we've got Jacob Wakeling and his goal away against Orient. Would you like to give the listeners some context?
Yeah, no, that was a great moment, wasn't it? Swindon were losing at Orient against the league leaders, but having a real crack at it. Wakeling has been stuck out at left wing back, which is not really his natural environment. And then he's played through. It's a lovely move and a really calm finish to beat Lawrence Figueroa, which hasn't happened often enough this season from other teams' perspectives. Put Swindon back into the game. Great travelling support there fairly early in the Jody Morris regime, and that was just on the run of a couple of good performances before that. So good goal, good moment for him, and it was one that had a bit of sort of underlying sense of optimism. And I can tell you, having been sat on the other side, the noise when that went in was tremendous, and that was among the loudest of the season, I'd say.
So congratulations for making yet another shortlist, Jake Wakeling. Yet another shortlist. But yeah, I was there that day. I stood alongside Chris, who's listening in. Crispy, good evening, pal. We know you're there with us in spirit. Chris and I went absolutely bananas when that hit the back of the net, let me tell you. Another moment, Andrew. Again, he's had a very, very, very difficult season. But I think as the season has wore on, there's been a lot of sympathy generated amongst Swindon Town fans, and certainly cries that some believe are sarcastic, but more often than not, I'm stood in the middle of them all, and they don't seem particularly sarcastic to me. It's Tommy Adeloye's goal against Newport, Andrew.
Yeah, I can see why that's kind of on the list. It's like in the context of the game, ultimately it didn't matter because it was very late. But I think at last it was just a chance to really sort of grasp the potential that we'd obviously seen and the kind of goal scoring form he had against Ayr. You go back to the sort of chance against Barrow that he missed, and there was all that. But he's just played it in the box, one touch, curled it nicely, neatly into the corner. Not quite. It's a shame for him that he couldn't actually kind of enjoy the moment more because it came late on in the game and it was a consolation goal. But no, it was good. It was good to kind of see him score and just give a glimpse of hopefully what he's about, and perhaps all of a sudden, given the regime change, he may yet be about next season. We'll see.
Now, we gave this a special mention earlier in terms of goal of the season, Andrew, but certainly as a moment, this is going to take some beating. It's Charlie Austin's return to the county ground versus Grimsby. And I think we can take this in the broadest possible sense, Andrew. So again, give us some context, if you will.
Yeah, no, I think it's one of the more nervous I've been before games for a while for lots of reasons. Firstly, if he scored, wanting to make sure it kind of sounded okay, but it was just a thing, wasn't it? That a player who started at Swindon and has actually genuinely retained that affection to the point where he was really quite happy to come back here and try and get on with some unfinished business. There was lots of sort of I think there was sort of nerves and expectations and some concerns. Can he be the same player? Can he still not necessarily can he score goals, but is this ultimately sort of going to work out in the right way? And like I said, it was first chance he had, stuck it away, and it started off a brilliant afternoon. So as a moment that was great, and as a day that was excellent.
And another moment that truly was excellent, and one that I will remember as long as I am a Town fan drawing breath on this fair earth. I predicted it was going to happen, as I think quite a few others did, including the man himself. Andrew, it's Joe Tomlinson against Harrogate.
Yeah, and a lovely moment again because we know his kind of we know his sort of rapport with the fans and the fact he is local, and I think people have sort of taken to him in all senses, in his personality, in his ability when he's been fit, which is sadly often enough. But yeah, great for him to score in front of the Town end again, and this time for it to count for 3 points as well against a a poor Harrogate side. You can tell he's enjoyed it on both occasions.
Well, time to give you the winner of the Blue Ribbon Award. So the Swindon Town Moment of 2022-23, as voted by the Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge and you, listeners. Well, in second place, with 19% of your vote, it was Joe Tomlinson's second debut celebrations in front of the Town End, and how wonderful they were. But the winner, with a whopping 75% of the vote, perhaps somewhat unsurprisingly, and Joe, I'm going to bring you in at this stage, it's Charlie Austin's return to the county ground. Now, granted, there were so many moments about his return. It was long in coming. It was a painful labour, but we got the baby out in the end. But by Christ, what a day that was. But the interesting thing, Joe, you and I were stood with each other at that game, and you grabbed me as we were celebrating his goal and spun me round, and I was already in a state of complete and utter, I don't know what you would call it. It wasn't hyperbole.
Delirium.
It wasn't even. It was just pure, unadulterated ecstasy was what it was. And I spun round, and all I could see around me were grown men crying. And I'm not, no hyperbole, Joe, is that?
No,
There were grown men crying their eyes out all around us.
it was unbelievable. I mean, even just before the game, the atmosphere around the ground was unbelievable. We got there really early, didn't we? And we went into the club shop, and we had people lining up outside the club shop because there were only a certain amount of, name sets for Austin for shirts available. So there are people queuing up outside the ground at like a 10:30, 11 o'clock to get an Austin shirt. We had Hoops and Jonah come round to have a chat with us before the game. We gave them some bits to get signed. And they were like, honestly, lads, like the amount of stuff we've got in the change room to get signed by Charlie before the game is a joke. Everyone was in their seats as well by like 2:15 for the warm up. I think we came out, we walked out for the warm up as they were just doing some stretches down the front of the Town End. And we walked past, and Charlie's with Johnny, isn't he?
Mm-hmm.
And everyone was just screaming Charlie's name. And it went silent for a second. I turned around and went, Johnny, I love you. He turned around, just looked at me and laughed. Like, the players were just loving it. Like the atmosphere was all about Charlie. I think the players felt so relaxed because it was basically a day off for them. It was all about Charlie. And when that goal went in, I've never experienced anything like it. I mean, it was just, it almost felt as if it was like a goal in a playoff final or something. I think everyone was there for that one thing. All they wanted was Charlie Austin to score, and he did it within like 20 minutes.
And there is that brilliant photo, Joe, isn't there? Andrew, you'll know the photo that I'm talking about, where it's managed to catch both Johnny Williams's expression and Charlie Austin's expression just as the ball leaves Charlie's head and is arrowing back across goal into the other side. And there's both, you could see how much that goal meant to the pair of them. And you're talking a couple of seasoned pros, right?
Oh, exactly. Yeah. It's a great photo. It's a great photo, and yeah, you could tell the joy in it as he wheeled away as well. And like I said, I think it did seem that everyone was delighted for him, essentially, which kind of showed how quickly he fitted into the team apart from everything else. But no, I know what Joe means, playoff final or whatever. But it was absolutely a sort of heightened sense of occasion, which for the rest of the season has been pretty much lacking.
So, I mean, look, Andrew, I'll give you the final word. I mean, how are Swindon Town fans, do you feel, how are we going to remember this season? Because like we said, it's very easy to just write it off and say we just want to forget it all. But there have been the occasional chinks of brilliance, haven't there? And if you were trying to give somebody something to cling on to at the end of a generally dastardly season, how do you think Swindon Town fans will go about remembering this year?
Well, I suppose it's sort of the what might have been year, isn't it? Really, and the division wasn't great. There were some signs of promise early on. Team got into quite a good position, and then it all sort of tailed off. I suppose the best thing for looking forward is that the club, with the moves they've made in the last, this week, have pretty much acknowledged we got it wrong and we can do better. So that's not necessarily a great note to end on, but I think you take those sort of isolated moments here and there, but you sort of understand that really it's been a bit of a chance to get up and get in the top 7 again, blown.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. Andrew, thank you so much for joining us tonight and giving us such a generous portion of your time. You're always a delight to hear your dulcet tones on the Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge. Open invite as always, Andrew.
No worries. Pleasure to talk about some nice stuff for a change.
Indeed, I'll catch you very soon. And Joe, always a pleasure, big man. Thank you ever so much for joining us.
Cheers, mate. My absolute pleasure.
And to our winners, again, just in summary, goal of the season has been picked up by Jacob Wakeling. Young player of the season has also been picked up by Jacob Wakeling. Young player of the season for the women's team has been picked up by Helena Diaz-Butcher. Player of the season for the men's team is Fraser Blake Tracy. Player of the season for the women's team is Goalmeister Annie Colston. And the blue ribboned moment of the season award has been secured by our very own returning hero, Charlie Austin. Well, we're not quite done this season. So get your pens out and get near your calendars and scribble a couple of dates in your diary. So we're going to be going properly live. So hopefully, if you're listening to the recorded version, the club will have started promoting this about the time that you're hopefully hearing the news. But on May the 14th, we've got 2 star-studded all-star Swindon Town of yesteryear clashing under the floodlights at the county ground. So 7 p.m. kickoff, May the 14th. We've got some wonderful for you. I'm not gonna blurt them all out because A, we've only got so much time in the day, but B, if I was to tell you that we've already got 2 squads of about 30 individuals, all of whom are household names in Swindon Town folklore. So not only that, but we are going to be giving 6 very lucky Swindon Town fans the opportunity to come and play on the county ground pitch, not against just your fellow fans, but you're actually going to be playing amongst your legends. 6 of you are going to do that. But that gets even better because 2 of you, another 2 of you, we are going to give you the opportunity to manage both of the teams. You picking the formation, picking the team, doing the substitution. It's on you. Anyway, more on that further down the line as it's breaking in the next 48 hours. Why are we doing this? Well, it's a Paul Caddis Select 11. And we're going to be playing against Paul Caddis and friends. Cy Ferry, you'll be pleased to know, is going to be in attendance. But why are we doing this? Well, anybody that was aware of Paul being at county ground early in the season will know that Paul's family had been touched by type 1 diabetes. It's been a pretty rocky year in some respects for Paul. His 10-year-old daughter Summer got very, very, very poorly. And in Paul's words, it's touch and go. So we're going to be raising funds for type 1 diabetes research and hoping to provide enough money to contribute to the ongoing and to support families that are affected by type 1 diabetes. So Paul will be telling us more about it again on the night, as he did when he was with us earlier in the season. And we very, very much look forward to that. And congratulations, of course, to Paul Caddis, because Swindon's loss in the managerial room is Hereford United's game. And Hereford have now got Paul Caddis as their manager moving forward. And wouldn't it just be poetry for Paul Caddis to make himself a Hereford legend down the road there, not miles away from Swindon? You kind of sense that there's still work to be done in SM1 for the wee man, but we will see. But not only that, the Broadbent is going to be back Tuesday. So on the 9th, we're going to be providing you with live and exclusive coverage of the Wiltshire Premier Shield final. There were plenty of you in us that were moaning about an absence of commentary around Swindon's games in the Wiltshire Premier Shield, and indeed friendly commentary. And this year, you've had all your friends commentated on by Swindon Town, by the Broadbent Lounge, and indeed, you're going to have the Wiltshire Premier Shield commentated on by ourselves. So Tuesday, week. The show should be starting, subject to the N25 behaving itself. I plan on having the show start for 6 p.m, so lots of exclusive interviews. There's going to be a good smattering of the first team playing what we believe to be a very dynamic development team fixture. And obviously they're taking on Westbury, who are Homebugs, and they're playing for silverware on our own turf. Tickets are still available if you want to get yourself along to the game. But if you want to listen from home, there's no better company than ourselves. So, set a reminder. Already put the fixture out. If you search Twitter Spaces, you can set a reminder. Get yourself settled in for the evening for hopefully a bit of silverware coming back to Swindon. And we'll have a lot of fun in the meantime. Look, it's been our pleasure hosting you, from myself and Joe and Andrew. Congratulations to all of our winners. Thank you to my co-host for tonight. We are the Tom Broadbent Lounge. We're an independent Twitter space. As such, our views do not represent those of Swindon South Football Club or Sir Tom Broadbent. It's been my absolute pleasure. We will catch you again on Monday for the final game of the season at home at the County Ground to Crawley. Take good care of yourselves and come on, you Reds.